Hi, my name is Tasmin. I'm a writer and author, and I live on the beautiful Azores Archipelago, gardening here and trying to live more sustainable. And this is my story. I was born and raised in a small town just outside of Munich, Germany, and I've never lived anywhere else in my entire life. I lived in the same house ever since I'm a little kid. So when university came around, I decided to stay in Munich because I was afraid and I really liked Munich, and I got a place at the LMU, Ludwig-Maximilians-Universität München. And there I studied social and cultural anthropology, as well as, well, archaeology, diverse history and archaeology. Don't really know how to summarize it. It's a weird subject to choose, but it was very interesting. And I really enjoyed being in university and learning about different cultures and all these types of things. But when my graduation rolled around, I had never been anywhere else. By that I mean that I did have the privileges of traveling maybe once a year, but I always stayed in Europe, and it was always for like maybe a week, and it was always a vacation experience. I never lived abroad. I never had like a crazy exciting internship. I never went for half a year somewhere else. I stayed put in Munich and just sometimes went for a week somewhere else. But that was it. By the time my graduation ended, I had never left Europe, and I had not seen too much of the world for somebody that studied cultural anthropology. I spent my years at university not only studying and enjoying being a student, but I also spent a lot of my time blogging and vlogging. I had 2 blogs, I had 2 YouTube channels, and I had a podcast. The blogs and everything were very book related, reading, writing, all that kind of stuff, and also traveling from the little bit of travel that I did do. And the podcast was more about finding yourself, which is kind of ironic because I didn't really find myself at the time. And I also was already a writer. I wrote multiple novels at the time because I knew that my big dream was to become an author. So of course I also spent a lot of time trying to apply for agencies and publishers if anybody wanted to publish my work, but unfortunately without any success. So I had my graduation, I had to decide what I was going to do next, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. I enjoyed blogging, I enjoyed vlogging, but I spent a lot of money on that kind of stuff, but I didn't earn anything. I was never like an influencer, I never had a big following. And with the writing, I was not successful with my tries to get published. But here I was, I needed to make a decision. I applied for multiple jobs, and to my own surprise, because my entire university life people had always told me with my degree I would never find a job, I got every single one that I applied for, which was very encouraging, and which is already the first thing I would like to give to you guys, is that just study whatever the hell you want. Like, everybody, for all those years that I was in university, everybody always told me, oh, social cultural anthropology, what is that? What are you going to do with this? What is your job that you're going to do? And after I graduated, I applied for a lot of very different jobs, and I got all of them. Well, but you don't see me in an office right now, do you? My intuition, my gut feeling told me that all of these jobs, no matter how amazing they sounded and how nice the teams were that I already met, it was not my path. It was not the right thing. I could not stop thinking about the fact that I'd never been abroad, that I never lived anywhere else. The thought of being stuck in Munich for the rest of my life scared me. So I thought, okay, let's try. I haven't signed a contract yet, so let's try. And I googled the most utopian thing I could possibly think of. A job on the Azores. You might ask yourself, why Azores? Why is this the most utopian thing you could possibly think of? Well, I had the privilege of visiting the biggest of the 9 Azorean islands, São Miguel, in 2015 on a vacation. It was the furthest I had ever been away from home, And it was, I think, also the longest trip I ever took. I think it was almost 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. And I fell in love with the place. I completely fell in love. Like before even landing, I don't know how to explain it to you guys. It's such a magical connection. I think some of you might understand and some of you might be like, what is wrong with you? But that's okay, because this is my story. But when we landed, I hadn't seen anything of the island except for a few Google images. But I stepped off the airplane, and the moment my foot touched the ground, it hit me like a lightning strike, and I felt like I'm home. This is it, I'm home. And I had spent a lot of my time in the previous years trying to find home, trying to find belonging. Which might sound weird, as I just told you that I've lived in the same house my entire life, in the same tiny town my entire life. But as much as I appreciate that house and my family and the city and everything, it was never truly where I belonged. There was always something else that I didn't know existed. And there it was. So since that vacation in 2015, all I ever wanted to do was to go back to the Azores. That is why it was the most utopian thing I could think of, was to live on these amazing islands, at least for a little bit. And I typed that into Google, and guess what? It did not disappoint me. It showed me one result. This result was a website that hadn't been updated in years, which was hacked, which was completely broken. And the job opportunity that was presented was years old. But I read the job description and I was like, this is it, this is it. My intuition was like, yes, I found it, this is it, this is it. So I did a little bit of research. I found the woman, I found the agency. I found out that they still exist and that they do in fact still operate. And I contacted her and I asked her if this internship that was online, if this would also happen in this year. And she replied, yes. Within the exchange of a few emails, it was clear that I was getting that job. And then I had to make a decision. On one hand, I had these amazing career options in Munich. And on the other hand, I had, well, an unpaid internship for 7 months. And it was, on top of all of that, not even on São Miguel, it was on Pico Island. So an island that I'd never been to before, a place I'd never been to before. And every logical person in the universe would have picked the career options. But my intuition told me to go for the Azores instead. Every cell, every inch of my body told me, go with it. Be courageous just one time in your life, because if not now, when are you gonna do it? This might be the last time you will ever be that free. Because I didn't have an apartment that I needed to take care of. I didn't have a car and I didn't have a job yet. I just finished my graduation. I was free as a bird. I would never be as free as in this moment. So I asked myself, if not now, when will you do that? I knew I always wanted to go abroad. I always wanted to experience living somewhere else. And every inch of my body said yes. So I said yes. Luckily, as a backup plan, I had already enrolled in the master's program of archaeology in Mesopotamia. In case any of the career options didn't work out, I wanted to go back to university. And therefore, I was able to have access to an Erasmus scholarship, which was thankfully granted to me, because otherwise, since this internship was not paid, I would have never been able to afford going there in the first place. But yeah, I felt so lucky that I had access to that I got the internship, and that I was able to go. So I dropped all my career options. I packed my bag, and in March of 2018, I left for Pico Island. And this is where my story of the person who I am today actually, truly begins. With those 7 months that were the hardest and most rewarding months of my entire life, that would change me as a person to a degree that I would never be the same person ever again, and that I would never want to return to Germany. But that is a story for another day. Thank you so much for listening, and see you soon. But only ever which channels. That was weird. My neighbor just passed by. It's really messy to film outside sometimes. Come on, garbage truck. Actually, quite the contrary. Quite the contrary.